if he said good things, he's a saint, okay?
He said all the koi in your pond were prettier than the ones that were in your pond earlier. That's what he
Well,
said.
that goes without saying. I mean, if I hadn't learned anything in this many years, God forgive me. But, let me explain a few things before we get started on this, because like the gentleman that started out, a koi judge, because there's myriad koi judges, okay? The biggest association that you'll run into in the United States is Associated Koi Clubs of America, okay? And that's who you're most familiar with, which I'm associated with, but I am not an Associated Koi Club judge, okay? Now, most of them had their training, if you give them truth serum, through Zen Nippon Arinkai, which is who I'm associated with. That's where they got all their training. The ones that formatted that, the BBC, everybody got their training. The original Koi Association was Zen Nippon Arinkai, so I don't bug you with that all day. We'll call it ZNA, okay? ZNA was the founding organization of all Koi anywhere in the world in Japan in the early 60s. It was started by a guy by the name of Takio Koroke. And it predates Shinkokai, which is a professional organization, everything else. This group was the founding of all organized Koi anywhere in the world. They're the beginning, okay? And even within that, there's layers upon layers of judging. So I'm not going to beat you to death with this like a horse, but this is the badge that you get when you get your Mouseketeer ears, okay? Even with that, there's different layers. Like in Westminster, to judge a Westminster show, you know, there's only a few people that are allowed to judge Westminster, okay? Well, there's different layers of judges within this. This badge is the highest level. Currently, in the world, there are 80 judges that have this patch or so, 70 or 80 judges. Outside of Japan, there are 3. I was the first. And I authorized one other person in the United States. Now, and Brett can back me up, you can jump anywhere, and it's not that I'm tooting my horn, I just want you to understand, there's only one person that ever passed it by Japanese standards, and that was me. Right, Brett?
Absolutely.
I had to learn Japanese to take it. To take it, you have to be able to judge 5 fish in 30 seconds and get it perfectly. And you have to go and judge shows in Japan and all that. I did that. How many years ago was that, Brett?
What, 15 years in?
15 years ago. And they couldn't decide whether they were going to let foreigners do it or not. I did it perfectly, 7 times?
At least.
Before they decided whether they were going to ever let a foreigner do it. And I finally said, you know, either let me in or not let me in. And they finally let me in. And it was many years, no one else passed. And they said, boy, they're never going to have another foreigner pass. So they started letting them do it in English. And the gentleman, the other American, was over 70 years old. And they thought he was going to die. And I kept saying, if you're not going to let him in, he's going to die. And they finally let me sign his papers, and they let him in because he wasn't ever going to get a perfect score. And so we got him in, and just a few months ago, a Chinese gentleman, they let him in, and he never got a perfect score. So in 15 years since I took it, 2 other guys have been allowed in, foreigners, in their native language without a perfect score. So that tells you how elite it is to get one of these. So I'm just telling you, it's a tough neighborhood. And I'm not saying these guys aren't qualified to be there. That's not the implication. I'm just saying, to get this badge is a tough neighborhood. Okay. So, anyway, moving along. Oh, is that a pointer?
Yes, a pointer, and this.
All right, show me how to work it. This moves it forward, and where's the pointer? This is the pointer. All right, now, what I'm going to teach you today is some basics on how to judge koi, and small koi in particular. But the fish you're going to be judging today is you're going to know a little bit about Ron, a little bit about Dainichi. How many of you ever heard of Dainichi Koi Farm? Okay. Now, I'm in love with Dainichi. I'm going to indoctrinate you on Dainichi. Dainichi is God. Okay? Now, there's several reasons I feel that way. You'll find out that I'm in love with Dainichi. I am Dainichi. Dainichi is number one. Dainichi is the only one. Now, if you don't like Dainichi, you're in trouble today, okay? Because I think Dainichi is number one. Now, there's a reason for that. You'll find out that I am totally prejudicial to Dainichi. I didn't start out that way. I fell in love with Dainichi. Now, you will find out that I am part of the Dainichi clan now. I didn't start out that way. I fell in love with this koi long before I had his son live with me for 3.5 years. Before I was part of the Dainichi clan and, was in his son's wedding ceremony as his father. You'll see all that in the slides. All that happened because I fell in love with their koi, okay? So that's all here. You'll see pictures of the wedding. It's all here in the video, in the slides. It's going to be all cool and stuff. It's because I loved his koi, all this happened. I'm not a wealthy guy. Some of his koi have been sold for nearly $1 million a piece. Okay? But he has koi, you can get groovy koi for a few $100 a piece. Okay? Now the koi that are being auctioned today, that you're going to get a shot at for $25 a piece, would retail for $1,000 a piece. If they turn out to be female, they were too little to sex when I got them from Japan. I handpicked these myself. I and the Dainichi family handpicked these ourselves in Japan. If they turn out to be female, they're much more valuable than that. They could be worth thousands of dollars. But even if they're male, they're worth $1,000 a piece. So for $25, you could be taking home at least a $1,000 fish. Okay? So this is a heck of an opportunity for you guys. Okay? It's really a great opportunity. This, I think anybody that's a koi person in the room would tell you this is the most famous fish in the world. It's called the Inazuma Showa. The Dainichi family, this won the All Japan show, which is considered the Westminster of koi. This fish won in the 90s. They have won, they and the Sakai family have won between them more times than any other koi families in the world. Have won, I think they're 1 or 2 shows apart. The Dainichi family is the only family that's won with the Gosanki, which I'll go into in a minute, which is the Kohaku, Sanki, and Showa. They're the only family that's ever won with all three. They're the only family that the fathers won and the sons have won. They're the only family that's ever won with the Showa twice. I mean, it goes on and on and on. They're just incredible. But this is the Inazuma Showa. Inazuma in Japanese means lightning. And you can see the lightning bolt. See? Isn't that cool? Okay. Have I indoctrinated enough so far? Is this forward?
Yes.
Okay. Koi appreciation. This is in my backyard. I'm sure you've seen the tank already, but here we are. This is Shigeru. This is my adopted son. He's one of the Mono family, and Monos are Dainichi, so I'll use that interchangeably through the lecture. There they are looking at koi in the backyard, and they're judging. These are some members of the club, and you'll recognize some of these people. Obviously, there's many types and varieties of koi. But we're going to focus today on the Showa. I'm missing a slide here somewhere. There we go. Yeah, it's the Gosanki. The Gosanki are the big three. These are the ones that usually win all the big prizes at koi shows. Okay? You saw all the different varieties, but when you see the big prizes at koi shows, it's usually one of these three. Now I'm going to focus predominantly on Showa today because that's the ones that we have in the tanks that y'all are going to be judging. So I'm going to spend most of my time on those. But when you're talking about
Put her at the computer.
Here. Mine, over there.
at the computer.
No, he's trying to in the corner.
Okay. They kind of have a saying in Niigata, which is where koi was founded. You spend your whole life studying koi, and you kind of begin koi with kohaku, which is the red and white one, and you end koi with kohaku. And it's kind of true. It's kind of the basic meat and potatoes koi, red and white. Okay, and this happens to be a sandan moyo, which means san means 3, moyo means step pattern, and so it's a 3-step pattern kohaku. Okay, and you can see that's kind of on which all other Gosanki are built. As you can see, then you've got your Sankei, which is a less black, Showa's more black, and I'm being very basic here. And Showa's what we're going to discuss more emphatically today. But you can see how it's easy to mix up Sankei and Showa, right? Basically, the difference is, if you hold your mouth wrong, is Sankei shouldn't have, but sometimes does, black on the face. Showa should. If there's color on the what? Pectorals, and in Japanese they call that the te, which we'll go into in a minute. They'll have tejima, which are rays, and the Showa, if they have it, it'll be called motoguro, and it'll be more of a big black. Okay? And basically there'll be smaller black on the Sankei and bigger black on the Showa. Now that's real rudimentary, okay? But I know I have audiences all different levels here, so we're being very basic. I'll go into more later. All right, so Go Sankei basically is the big three, and Go Sankei relates to the different branches of the Shogun family, and we won't go into that, but that's where they got the name. Okay, so there's 3 branches of the family, 3 branches of the big three of the Nishiki-goi. Okay, which Nishiki-goi basically means brocaded fish or carp. Any questions so far? All right, let's talk about some basic markings on the Showa. Now we're going to focus on the Showa. Any questions on the Kohaku or the Sankei before we focus on just the Showa? Anybody dozing off yet? Okay. All right. Now Showa, the Kohaku, like I said, is kind of the basics by which the big three is based on. Sankei is kind of considered the feminine of the three, more delicate and ladylike, and the Showa is considered kind of the masculine and powerful. Okay, that's the way the Japanese see it anyway, because it's got very bold colors, big splotches of color, and Dainichi. Some people debate who has the best Kohaku. Everybody would like to think they have the best Sankei. Mano-san, which the father of the Dainichi clan has passed away, but he always used to laugh. He said there are many former Sankei breeders because Sankei are so difficult that a lot of people go broke trying to breed them. And even though he was very successful, and they are at breeding them, people that just specialize in Sankei tend to go broke. You've got to make your money at something else and do those on the side or you'll starve to death. But anyway. So anyway, here's the basics with Showa, okay? Things you look for in Showa, or any fish, is the body. Now, with little fish, and we'll go into those in a minute, but obviously a bigger fish, you want a voluptuous fish. Well, what you get by with a small fish is obviously less. When they're small, you just want to make sure that it's well defined, that it has all its parts, and we'll go into that in a minute. I'll have live pictures of that, so we won't go into that now, because I've got live pictures of fish to show you later on that. But let's just go into some names and stuff, all right? When you're talking about a fish, you want to make sure that it has all its barbels, okay? That's the little whiskers. And there's a little traditional story about that the reason that they have those whiskers is there was a contest in China. And there was all the fish in China were going up, having a contest to see who was the bravest and strongest. And they were all competing for the gods to see who was the bravest and strongest fish. And they were all trying to get up these rapids to go up this waterfall. And they were all exhausted. And finally, the carp made one last attempt to go up these rapids, up the waterfall. And they were finally successful. And his reward is he was turned into a dragon. And in Oriental mythology, Chinese mythology, a dragon is a good thing. So they were made into aerial dragon. And of course, aerial dragons in Oriental mythology have whiskers. And that's a reminder to carp to this day that they are descendants of the dragon. So anyway, it's important that those barbels are there, okay? So those are things to look for in small fish. Also, and I'll teach you this when we get out to the tanks, things to look for on these fish. Now bear in mind, I've already checked all this stuff before they got here. So you don't have to worry about any of these fish not having these kind of things. So it's not like it's not all going to be there. So those are the kind of things you're not going to have to sweat. But anyway, Motoguro, remember I talked about it earlier. Now, that's not a disqualification, so don't get wrapped up in that, especially in babies, because it may not be there to show up later. The whole tail or pectoral fin can be totally black or totally white. That's not a deal breaker, okay? I've seen an All Japan show winner not have it on one side. People get all wrapped up in it because it's nice and symmetrical, but you gotta watch that, and a lot of times I see that in judges that weren't trained, with the ZNA guys. And as a matter of fact, some of the ZNA guys too. You get so wrapped up in, the specifics. Oh, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that, it doesn't have that. What you end up is a very mediocre, technically mediocre fish. In other words, you've taken all these things away from it, and it's technically got all these things, but it's not a very good fish. You've taken all the magic out of it. And that's what you've got to watch when you're judging. You want to keep the quality in, and so it's got a little problem here, a lot of there. It's still a beautiful fish. So you've got to watch that when you're judging, that you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I see that happen all the time. They get wrapped up in the pattern, or they get wrapped up in, oh, it's got this. Well, so it's still a beautiful fish. So you have to watch that, and you have to be very careful with that. Okay, so white is called shiro. Red, and for some reason that disappeared, is called he.
What's the difference between Benny and he?
Nothing. But most of the time they use the more archaic term he.
That's more archaic.
No, it's more koi.
Oh,
But it's a more archaic term for red. Benny is equally used, they're interchangeable, but when you're talking koi, more people use he, but you'll hear Benny used interchangeably. But I'm saying he is a more archaic term in Japanese. Benny you'll hear more used outside of koi language, but you won't ever hear he. Like if you talk to somebody on the street and you use the term he, they won't know what you're talking about unless they're koi people. Okay? All right, you heard it. Sumi is black. Now, the borderline, which has been down here of any color pattern, is called kiwa, which means the edge of a pattern. It's real important. Now, the reason I say that's important is because when you're judging koi babies or otherwise, you've got to understand kiwa. Now, judging kiwa in babies is different than in judging adults, but we'll talk about that when you're looking at a picture later. Okay? So we've talked about Motoguro, Sumi, Shira, barbels, Tei, red, the body, tail tube, and that's really all we can get off this picture right now.
What's the red pattern called?
He or Benny? Whoever said that, was it you? All right, these are two of the common face pattern, which is Minwadi, which kind of makes a Y pattern if it's finished. But a lot of times in babies, this will be interrupted. You'll see kind of parts of it. It'll be broken up here or here along the way. A lot of times in a bigger fish, it'll be finished. Okay? So you'll see it covered up, so in babies, don't look for that to be finished. But it looks really cool. Okay? Another common style you'll see is this will look like a V, and you'll have Sumi Hana, which Sumi, remember, is what?
Black.
And Hana means flower or nose. Interchangeable in Japanese. They think you, of course, mine does as big as a flower, so too many missed blows in karate, boxing. So, see, that kind of gives you offsets, and that can look really cool too when you've got black on the nose like that. That can look real cool. But once again, if it's not there, and I know I sound like a broken record, but don't get too wrapped up in the fact that it's there or not there. Look at the symmetry of the fish overall and the quality of everything. You hear me keep beating quality, quality, quality. Because I find out that a lot of times people get wrapped up in pattern, pattern, pattern. And pattern should be what, Brett?
Should be about the third thing you look at.
Third or fourth or fifth or
Yeah.
sixth or seventh thing you look at. Especially in babies.
Especially in babies.
Yeah. Because everything's, especially in shows, yeah, it's coming up. That's it. Let me say that right here. Shows are fun to watch because they change more than anything else. Okay, they're a great thing to watch because if you want to, as babies, they change so much over the years. Over a 3 or 4 year period, they change so much. So they're great fun to watch. You know, because you get to see a true metamorphosis. You know, they're practically transcendental because they change from week to week. Like I've had these fish here in the United States since what, May, Brett? And he can tell you, and so can Ryan, that you know he's been my assistant with this. And how much have we seen them change just since they've been here?
Oh, a few times.
Yeah, it's been dramatic, and I know since we looked at them, Shigeru and I looked at them when I was over there in January. Phenomenal difference. Of course, when he and I saw them, now they're
Yeah.
like this. All right, let's talk some things you should look at when you're looking at babies. Like tozai is a fish that's a year or less, okay, like 12 months or less. So when you're talking about tozai, you got to look at it from the point of husbandry or farming, because depending on what time of year it is, it can be this or it can be this. So, you know, when somebody's talking to you about their tozai, depending on the time of year it is, it can be a pretty good sized fish or it can be, you know. So keep that in mind, you know, about what they're talking about. Because if they're talking about their tozai, you got to realize the farm year. Everybody understand what I mean by that? What I'm saying is if you understand the fish cycle, like right now, the fish, if they're talking about their tozai now, they've just had a spawning. If they're talking about last year's tozai, they're big fish. And sometimes they get that mixed up. And I know it sounds confusing, and people use that, but that's people assume you know that, and you're kind of like a deer in the headlights, because it gets to be a very incestuous, small little world. And if you're a pond keeper and aren't hardcore koi, you kind of get beat up. And then you go, well, to hell with it. You know, they're treating me like an outsider, and I want to make sure you're insiders, you know, that you know what's going on. Because it gets, I don't think they mean to be snobs, but it gets snobby. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get y'all where you know what's going on, you know. And I don't want you to get taken advantage of, because they love doing that. Everybody does, you know, all this snake oil crap, okay? Anyway, tozai, 15 centimeters. And I brought my little thingy here.
6 inches.
That's 15 centimeters right there. Not very big. That's not really in proportion, but, you know, I look like I'm great at PowerPoint. Anyway, pattern can be bold in a show, even at that size. But you can see the gray areas, or maybe you can't from here. Like this is a gray area, and this is a gray area, and all this is gray. What I'm trying to tell you is that's still under the skin, and that's called atozumi. ATO's SUMI or ZUMI, which means it's secondary zumi and it's still under the skin. Okay. And the he, or the red, or the Benny, is orange. In other words, it's not finished either. And it can look very insipid, and people go, oh, or pink. It can even still be pink. And everybody goes, yeah. But there's ways I can show you. Now, can I teach you what it took me a lifetime to learn in an hour, or an hour and 15 minutes, or whatever time y'all want me to take here? And, you know, another hour and a half tonight? But can I take you along the road, path of righteousness? Amen. Hallelujah. Say hallelujah. But we can move you along, okay? And the sumi can be very gray and yucky, you know? And Shigeru, got a point of bread calling Shigeru, because just to give you an idea, Shigeru, take a guess how many fish he personally blesses each year on his farm, that he looks at, personally looks at every year. You want to guess?
10.
10?
10 million.
No, I
You're
didn't say
closer.
million, I said 10.
He personally puts his hand on.
No, I thought you were asking how many he was gonna keep, or.
No. How many he personally
Oh,
culls? It's
millions.
called
Oh, then it's
Sinbesa.
millions then, of course.
That he personally touches.
No, millions then.
4.8 million. That he personally, I don't mean his staff, I mean he. 4.8 million he personally touches every year. Besides flying all over the world and shaking hands. And the only place in the whole world, I got your hand just a second, that he personally sells koi, not through a dealer, is in my backyard one day a year. Only place. Yes, ma'am.
I actually got one this spring. That duck came down and picked up some. And one thing I noticed about my fish is that the sumi, it looks like it's deep in the fish.
Yes.
Is that a good description of it?
Yes, that's called subo sumi, and it's called suya. Dainichi's famous for that, and that's like a well. He kind of invented that.
And that's going to slowly rise up?
Rise up and spread out. That's why they call it a well. It's like a spring. And it's like wet ink. Beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. That's why everybody wants Dainichi in their bloodline. They don't ever claim it. Well, some of them do, but a lot of them go, oh, no, I would never have Dainichi in their bloodline. And then you see them sneak in. I've seen these famous breeders come in at night and beg to buy breeders from them. But that's neither here nor there. Okay, any questions on that? We'll move on. Nisai obviously is a, come on, get in this. And that's 40 centimeters. Now, obviously, Dainichi has what they call jumbo. That's a Japanese term, meaning, yeah, it's become a Japanese word. That's about 40 centimeters. But now, a lot of sometimes they can actually have a 1-year-old get that big now. Sometimes.
So is it considered Nisai, or is it still a 1-year-old fish or less?
Oh yeah, it has nothing to do with it. No, I'm just saying,
I
an
know
average
it can.
2-year-old is 40 centimeters.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter how big it is. I'm
It's
just
still-
saying, size, whatever size
Or
it
age
is.
doesn't matter.
Whatever size it is, it's age.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, traditionally, you see Nisai at about 40 centimeters.
But is that good to have a 1-year-old get that big?
Yeah.
I mean, that's awfully fast growing, isn't it?
Yes and no. It depends on the fish. Now, if, big is better, here we go. But it is and it isn't, okay? Because it depends on the bloodline. And, Tobi, which is what they call in Japanese a Tobi Tosai, can be better if it is genetically predisposed to be so. Right, Brett?
That's a big if.
Yes, and I'm having a breeder chime in because if it's just a big lunky fish, it's a big lunky fish, and I've seen as many Tobi he thrown away as Tobi he's another word, sorry. Tobi Tosai thrown away as kept. Yes, if it's got it all together and it's a big Tosai, it's very valuable. Yeah, you chunk that baby along. And I'll show you a picture of one here that sold for between $10,000 and $15,000 in a second. It's a horrible picture. I took it. I'm also not a great photographer. That's why I bring other people along. But anyway, but yeah, sometimes, some of Dainichi Tosais and Sakai Tosais have gone for $50,000 a piece. Now, there's another saying in Niigata. Only a fool buys a Tosai, and only a bigger fool sells one. But the trend right now in Japan is they're real hot on buying Tosais. And a lot of these, because there's no bigger cameras in the world than Asians, right, Ryan?
I wouldn't know.
Oh, you liar!
It's here.
See him turning purple on me? Oh my God! Because they're buying drains. Now, the breeders really don't want to sell them. But, I mean, if customers want to buy them, they'll put a number to them. Of course, they have a heart attack when they turn bad. But they're the first ones to go, look what I bought for $30,000, and it turns out to be a beautiful fish. Of course, they have a heart attack when it flops. Want their money back, and, it's terrible. Anyway, Nisai, 2-year-old, 40 centimeters. The he has yet to achieve its intensity, but you can see it coming up. It's less pink, more orange, darker orange. Starts gaining definition. What I mean is, and we'll talk about that, some of this will be better when we're over the fish out there, because I'll give a little lesson. I've got 6 fish, only 5 are in the show, in the test. And the one I'll teach off of, and I've also got a picture of it here. We'll go over it later. We can do this as long as you want. It's up to you, and I'll spend a lot of time on the one if you want to. Okay. Starts getting definition. The semi-pattern starts coming up under the skin. It starts showing definition. Sansai. When they're 3-year-old, actually a good time to buy a fish if you've got the money. 2 and 3-year-old. 3-year-old's usually a good time. You kind of know what you're buying. 3 and 4-year-olds. 4-year-old's actually the best time, because 4-year-old, that's when the breeder knows pretty much what he's got and he's willing to sell it. Because it's no longer a top to go away, it's pretty much is what it is. It'll either be very expensive or he knows it is what it is and he's willing to sell it. Okay, now these aren't two. Was it a thumbprint? Sorry about that, guys. Now, bear in mind, Tosa, I remember 15 centimeters, 40 centimeters, 60 centimeters, 75 centimeters. So, they're going to be like this. Sorry I didn't do them to scale, but I was in a hurry. But it gives you an idea of the progression. This is the same koi. And see how this is the same koi, and this is a real fish, but I've turned it into you pixelated it instead of a photograph so you can get a better idea of what the colors are doing. See, it's gradually, see how the skin, the different colors are coming up? Interesting, huh? And see the Motoguro, so you can barely see it here, and see how it's gradually coming up? And see the face, see what I'm talking about? See how it's gradually coming up and filling in? And see, even at 4 years old, that Y is still not completely closed in there. Interesting, huh?
Is it common when they're the toe side to have?
Well, you can tell mostly by the size. Sir?
Like the black that's in the center? The sumi and the toe
See
side?
how it's filled in there?
No, in the center between the toe side and the knee side, or
Knee
the
side.
black is kind of like gone away and then it's coming back later.
It does that sometimes. It will retract sometimes, especially in shell. But I've seen it do it in Sanki too. In particular bloodlines of Sanki, like Sadazo, which happens to be the Dainichi bloodline, it'll drive you crazy. Yes, ma'am.
How will the fish be when the wine is finished?
Maybe never.
Okay.
But in this case, I'd say probably another year.
I mean, if it's going to,
Probably another year,
about 5 years old.
Okay. Which is young side. Okay?
Is that for young son? Young side?
Young side. It's 5 years. Okay, now, this is one of the fish that's going to be auctioned off. Not bad, huh? 5-year-old. I'm sorry, this is 5-year-old. God. Yeah, very small, thin 5-year-old. This is. Let me try that again. Ron pulls his foot out of you know where. This is not one of the 5, is what I meant to say. So there's actually 6 fish that are going to be out there, but this is not one of the test fish. So I have one fish that we'll teach off of. It's still a very nice fish, and it's bigger than the others. The other is slightly bigger, and I knew everybody would want to pick it for number 1, so I pulled it out of the 5. Even though I'm not saying it's necessarily the best fish, but I knew everybody would inherently go, well, it's bigger, I'll pick it more, which would have skewed, did I do that? Whoop, yeah, everybody wants that one, right?
Nice.
$25.
Okay, let's look at this fish, all right? Now, I screwed you all up. The nose is, what on that?
Lipstick.
No, that's not Coochie Benny.
What is it?
Coochie Benny, I'm glad you brought that up. That's my pet peeve in America. Everybody calls it Coochie Benny, and that's not Coochie Benny. Coochie Benny is actually on the lips. That's Akahana. And everybody calls it Coochie Benny, and it pisses me off.
Uh-oh. Damn, I'm not gonna win nothing.
Even American judges call it, when it's on the lips, it is Coochie Benny. That is Akahana. Because it's on the nose. Now, you'll often see it on the lips, but that's not on the lips.
Okay,
Okay?
I won't forget that one.
It's all right. As sure as I say that, the Japanese are so used to Americans saying it wrong. You ask a Japanese when you come up here, he'll call it. He'll call it Coochie Benny over here because he knows that's what all Americans call it. They gave up long ago. All right, now, what have I been calling secondary sumi?
Gray and,
Akozumi, right?
oh, you're Japanese.
Or gray, that's fine. You can do it American. I mean, you're American, it's cool. But see it right there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See how there's a Y of it right there? See it? And this is where it's starting to pop out, right? So it's all in the right places, right? Now, what's neat about this red? It's already very strong, right? Now, let's look at some other things about this. Can y'all see it okay in the back? Brett?
Yeah.
What's very good about the border lines, which are called
Kiwa. Kiwa.
kiwa?
Not very good.
What?
Not on the
Who said not very good?
not it.
Go up and look at them.
They're very clear.
Get up from your chair and go look at them, please. Please.
Yeah, he's not gonna do it.
Go look at them. No, I'm serious. Go look at them close. I'm not trying to offend you. I want you to go look at them.
I'm looking at the black, so
No, but I'm saying look at the red.
oh, the red fine.
Well, that's what's finished. Black's not finished.
Okay.
So is it early for that red to be finished?
Not necessarily. Every fish has its own destiny, and you got to know the bloodline. But this particular fish, the red's very well defined already. Now the front edge, and we're not going to get into all that because y'all don't have time to learn this thing. But the front edge is overlapping, and what's that called, Ryan?
Sashi.
Sashi.
Sashi Sakoma.
And because Dainichi is famous for sashikomi, and what's the backside called?
Kiwa.
It's called kiwa, but what particular type?
Marazoni.
Marazome. He's the man. He's my best. Well, Brett, but that's cheating. Marazome. And that Dainichi fish are very famous for that. It makes the red very, or sumi, very deep, like you were talking about. And it's an overlapping like shingles on a roof. And you can see how, see that area right in there? See right in there how it overlaps and right in there? See how it looks like layers of shingles and how they overlap? It looks kind of pink right there in the very beginning, right there. That's what he's talking about. It's very desirable because as that fish grows and grows and grows, that'll kind of disappear, and all that red will come up and it'll be magnificent. And I'll show you that picture of that fish you saw that pops up in a minute. That's all finished, and that's why it was considered.
And the back,
No, you don't know that.
Oh, I don't know
the backside
You know,
finishes.
at this age, it's really hard to tell.
Oh, okay.
I mean, everybody, there's people that we know right here in the local area go, oh, that's definitely a male. And they say, oh, I'm sure this is a female, and they're wrong more than they're right.
yet. I just thought because
I
of the
just-
strong reds.
You can't tell by
You
that.
cannot
But they tell you can.
tell. Okay.
And especially at this size, it's horse puppy because at certain times of the year you can tell by roughness on the tay, and sometimes you can look at the cloaca, and sometimes you can tell. But at that size, as small as they are, it's really hard to tell. And they tend to be very bisexual, heterozygote, whatever you want to call it. What would you call it, Brett?
When they're little, they're not sexually dimorphic.
Yeah. And they can, I won't say they can change sexes, but I've had them look male one moment, and I've even had them have sperm and be female. And I've had them look female and be male.
They're ambiguous.
Prime example of that is I bought him a very, very expensive male one time that had sperm. I spent $6,000 on it that I bought from Shigeru for him. And it had sperm for his program. Remember that?
Still got the fish, but it's not a male.
And I'll be damned if he's still in his program, and it was female, which was great for him because it ended up being about a $25,000 female. Of course, if I'd known it was female, I'd kept it for myself. True or not true?
Oh, that's, yeah.
And I mean, we actually
Built upon its
got sperm out of it. So that shows you how crazy it can be. And it was that wasn't a Tozai, that was an Isai 2-year-old. So that shows you how crazy it can be sometimes. Now that's a very rare occasion, but it did happen. So, now you can see how undefined the Motogura are on this fish. But now I'm going to talk about pattern. Notice how I saved it for a long time, okay? But let's talk about it as a kohaku, okay? All right, sandan moyo. Is this sandan moyo?
No, basically.
Hmm?
Basically.
Who said no? Because they're wrong.
Uh-oh.
Is it not steps?
Good step, yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if it's 5 steps, what would that be? We were just talking about 5. What is 5? Yon. So it'd be yandan moyo, right? And I know this a lot. Don't get wrapped up in it. I'm just trying to throw it all together and dazzle you with my coolness. Okay? So it's yandan moyo, right? Now in Showa, you don't get as wrapped up in all this. If it were a Sanki or Kohaku, obviously it's more important. But I'm showing you that's there, right? All right, we already decided the Kohaku part of it's got nice edges, right? Now, we don't know, as we talked earlier, about the edges of the black because it's still atozumi. We don't know. So we can't talk about the defined edges because it's still under the skin. We don't know, right? All right. Now, let's talk about the skin. Looks pretty good. What we can tell, we know the red part's good. The black, what we can see up, is good because it looks shiny, right? The few pieces we see up look good, right? Okay. White that's clear, right here is clear, nice and shiny, right? Okay. So far, so good. Barbels are there. Eyes are even, right? I don't see any problems, do you? Body's nice and straight. I don't see any problems. There it is.
I see.
Right there.
That's it right
In the tail.
there. And now, are we looking for the perfect pattern?
That's the least.
And what did I say? You gonna throw the baby out with the bathwater? Now, I can get Shigeru on the phone. He can find that fish for you. You got $250,000? Okay. Or a $25 raffle fee. Have I made my point? Any other questions on this fish? We'll spend as much time. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I'm talking about the edge of the pattern, how you're saying that.
What is an edge of a pattern?
It is kiwa? Kiwi?
Okay.
Kiwi, kiwa? How do you say it?
A kiwi you eat. That's very high in vitamin C
It's
and potassium.
K-I-W-A. K-I-W-A.
Uh-huh.
How do you say it?
Kiwa.
Kiwa.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that's very important. So what's good about his edge is that he's kind of, the red that's kind of.
Come up here and look. Please.
I'll be happy to come up.
I want you to.
Because if that's real important.
Now, don't get too wrapped up in this because these are babies, but the reason I pulled
Well,
this
I
one
know,
out
but
is
you
it
said that
happens
was
to be
really
incredibly
important.
good. See, look at the edges. See how well defined they are?
Yeah.
Now,
I see what you're
See
saying.
the front of it, how it's got that
Oh,
overlapping?
I see, yeah.
Which he just told you the answer to?
But you don't want it to overlap.
Yes, you do.
You do want
In
it
the
to
front.
overlap.
That's because it shows it's deep.
In
And
the
this time,
front.
in the front, see how it overlaps?
Yeah,
Now, on the head, it doesn't matter because there's no scales.
right.
There's scales back here, so it matters, see? See?
Uh-huh,
Here, you won't, it's well defined.
right.
On the head, it matters because there's no scales, right? See? See? See?
Oh, I see.
Make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Capiche?
You can see it better up here, y'all.
That's why I wanted y'all to come in. Now, mind you,
Different rules,
but
so you
before
can
we do the judging, I've got that fish out there live.
Yeah, next
And
thing
it's
you
not
have to
one of the
go-
5 fish, that's why I wanted you to see it here, and then we'll take that fish up and put it in a bowl, and let you look at it there too. This is here, live, so I'm trying to put the two together.
If the high on the backside.
The what?
High?
Hi.
I'm sorry. On the backside is,
I'm messing with you.
yeah, no, I understand. If it's not defined at this age, is that good or bad? I mean, that's got good, it's good and smooth and it's there. You don't see a lot on the backside. There's still a little high heat coming up on the front side here, on this fish right here.
But see, once again.
What I'm saying is, when you're looking at a small fish, if this is real well defined right here, that's good, right? Not so important on a young fish.
No,
here.
that's in the front. It's overlapping, see?
I know, but that's what I'm saying. It's not as important on this side as it is on this side.
You're missing the lecture.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that's overlapping.
I know.
That's a whole different issue.
Okay. Okay, but what I,
Class, what did I tell him?
it's overlapping. It's going to come up, right?
You're missing the
Or
point.
is it
That's
gonna-
the depth.
I understand it's down.
It matters. It's not that it isn't well defined. It's because the white scales and the red scales are overlapping. It is well defined.
Okay. You're
But
saying
you've got
it's-
the white scales and the red scales overlapping. It
Okay.
is well defined, but you've got the white scales and the red scales overlapping. That's why it's cloudy looking.
right. And as the
Did I
fish-
do that?
No.
No.
He
Turn
did.
it
Perfect.
Turn it
I
down a
thought they
little
was
bit.
having another stroke.
Trying to turn the lights
I was
down.
going to try to find my
Picture right
priest.
now.
No.
Okay, where that's on the front edge, then, is that gonna come out? Is this?
That's what I was saying earlier, is the fish gets much more mature.
Right.
You know, when it's much older. I'll show you, well, let's just do it. That's how one will finish.
Hey, you're in the way.
That's not fish.
That's
Oh,
a
no.
drawing.
No, that's not a drawing.
Yeah.
That's a picture. That's not
But
a
now it's
drawing.
defined all the way around.
That's only the most famous fish in the world alive today. And that, by the way, that is the mother of the fish that you're, yes. That's the mother of the fish that you're auctioning today. Her name is Sakura or Sayuri. She won the All Japan Show in 2007. And she is probably the most, I'd say, most famous fish alive today. And she looks just like that in person. Well, not so much now, she's a working girl, but when she won, that's how she looked. I know, because I took that picture.
How old are you having this fish?
9, 10?
In this picture.
Yeah, at that time she was 9 or 10. I mean, she doesn't look near that good now because she's a breeder.
Right.
But that's how I took that picture. I can occasionally take good pictures, but I took about 200 to get that one. But that is a picture. That's not a, no.
So how long would you expect that fish to live?
Well, as a breeder, you never know, but probably 30 years, 40 years. As a breeder, she could die next year. You know, I mean, breeding's very tough on female
And if
fish.
she's not a breeder, how long would she live?
As a
30 or
breeder,
40 years, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
As a breeder, you don't know.
That's how I think one time that the record.
When you say, Brett, 30?
5 years, when I asked if they depreciate the brood fish over 5 years, because that's the average lifespan.
5 or 10 years for a
Five,
breeder.
5 years as a breeding fish.
As a breeding fish.
You know, you take.
But I'd say if she was just in a pond living out her
40
life,
years would be unusual.
30, 40 years.
Yeah, I saw a trivia thing that said the
Not
record.
true. I know the one you're going to say. It's all pucky.
It is.
Because they based that on crenulations on the scale, and that's based on seasons, not on years.
So 125 is a bad number.
It's probably not true. it's, no.
So.
So why would they not rest those fish some so that they might live longer?
Bucks.
Well, I know, the bucks would be the same, I would think, whether it's a 5-year fish or,
No.
I would think they might get more by resting, no?
No.
No,
They make hay while the sun shines.
okay.
They can die from anything, earthquake,
Yeah, well, that's true.
they jump out,
Yeah,
anything can happen. You may, besides, she's famous now.
yeah.
Anything can happen. But she looks just that way. I mean, at that time. You can see, she's considered the perfect show. And I think, I saw both the Inazuma in her prime, and I saw her in her prime, and I think she's more beautiful. She's the most elegant thing I've ever seen in my life. And I've been to every All Japan show for the last 15 years. Something like that. She's poetry in motion. She's just phenomenal.
Out of the total of the breed period of, let's say 5 years, I don't know how many young you'll get, millions, I guess, maybe, but how many will end up anywhere close to this quality?
Billions?
Really?
Oh, her?
Yeah.
She's one out of trillions.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll probably never be another one in her quality.
Just, yeah. There's no two alike, I know, but,
I mean,
so if you get 3 or 4 over the span of the breed,
well, to give you an idea, in the period, her Showas are very difficult to win the All Japan show because they're the most complicated of the 3, you might imagine, as far as being the best they can be. Kohakus win most of the time because they're the easiest to beat, to breed standard, because they're the simplest. So they win most of the time. Sanki, next most. And to give you an idea, the Inazuma show won in early 15 years ago. And then 5 years ago, one of their students won with a Showa that was bred from Dainichi parents. And then this one won, and that's the only Showas that won, period. That's how difficult Showas are. So all Dainichi Showas, of all the Showas that have won ever in the last 20 years, 25 years, the big show. Huh? And it's that wide. It was at the time. I mean, now, like I said, she's not near, because, you know, her back's a little crooked now because, you know, breeding's very, she still looks pretty dang good. I started to bring a picture of what she looks like now, but I don't want to.
Ron, I have a question.
Yes,
I thought, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe don't tell me I'm stupid, but
I
I
would never
thought
do that.
the pattern for it to be a perfect fish, that it had to be symmetrical.
you don't think that's symmetrical?
Well, I mean, the red doesn't look symmetrical to me.
It's a show. Okay. All right, let's take it apart a little bit, okay?
Okay.
Take the red completely off of it. Look at it, close your eyes, blink out the red. Is that a good Utsuri?
Yes, it would be.
So, the black is some more symmetrical, I mean.
That's where the symmetry comes in, is in the black.
Okay.
Towards the back.
Exactly. The red's just so magnificent and deep, that's where it comes in.
Oh, okay.
And you got to see, in a Showa, it's the first time they've ever had a Showa that every edge is perfect. Ever. Never in the history of a Showa that size, which was 86 or 7 centimeters, have they ever had Kiwa completely finished on every edge.
But the baby's edges are not gonna be like that.
it never happens on any Showa. It just never happens. I mean, that's just Showa. It's just not going to happen. And it did. And it was perfect.
Don't Showas have to wrap, it needs to wrap around the body?
And then what is a big wrap called, do you know?
Well, I have no idea. I
It's
just,
called
the fact-
moyo.
The fact that I know it at all is.
I was impressed. I mean, we can go into this as deep as you want. I mean, I've got 35 years of experience. I mean, we can go there. But a small wrap is called pomoyo. A big wrap is called omoyo.
But we'd rather have a big wrap?
On a Showa, it's highly desirable. Yeah, actually, a Showa has to have it.
Yeah.
But you won't always see it in a baby because it's under the skin. But they've all got it. Don't worry, I checked for it. I didn't teach it today because it's already there.
Well, I've heard a few of your lectures before, so I did learn something.
Good, I'm kind of impressed. No, I knew I couldn't put all that in an hour. I mean, I can't teach you everything about a Showa in, how long have we been at it? Or y'all want to keep going? I mean, I can go into this as far as you want. All right, this is a terrible picture. Now this is Ron Pictures. This is the picture of a fish that sold for about $15,000 as a tozai.
Good American.
What, the cash?
Yeah.
Very. And they were begging him to sell it. He didn't want to sell it. This is Shigeru. This is my adopted son. And this gives you an idea of him handling fish out in a mud pond. This is them gathering fish. It's my boy. I gotta wipe that off.
It's on the projector.
Is that what it is? I feel so much better.
Yeah, I know there's pictures too.
But this is, the reason I put this together, this is Mono-san. He was my very dear friend. He took a liking to me, God knows why. He thought I had a good eye, and he's the one that taught me. I actually didn't train with hobbyists. I trained with who I think is the greatest koi person in history. A lot of people agree with me. He did Inazuma Showa, and these are the three sons. This is number one son. This is Futoshi. This is number two son, and he runs their farm in Toyota City. And this is Shigeru. And then, of course, this is the one you just saw the picture of. This is another picture I took, sorry. And this is the Inazuma, which the father did. And this is, so I think it's really a great tribute that the boys achieved the same thing the father did, all on their own.
If they talk about 3 Danichi farms, they're talking about the boys then,
The three Dainichi sons, yeah.
okay?
Uh-huh.
But they're still Dainichi fish.
They're all in it together. All the
Okay.
farms are, all the boys are, it's all the same farm,
Okay.
but they're different locations.
Uh-huh.
But Niigata, and then he does, these two boys are in Niigata, and he's in Toyota City.
Okay.
And then they have international holdings too. I don't want to go into that. You had a question in the back.
I did. I just want to make sure I understand one thing, and that is, it sounds like you're saying that the Sumi pattern is more important than a Showa.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying what anchored that fish in that particular case and what made the symmetry in that particular case. Every fish is different. What made the symmetry in that particular fish was the sumi. You got to bear in mind, every fish is art. See, what makes the symmetry, perfect example, I'm glad you brought that up. What makes the symmetry in this fish? The rings. Exactly. What makes the symmetry in that one? See?
Okay, so which of those two fish do you like better? You were judging them.
That's the Dainichi.
Second. And I've seen them both in
Over
person.
there, that one over there?
Yes, the
Yeah.
boys fish. If I had my way, if I could take the body of this fish and put it on this fish,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because that one's bad.
no. Ooh, bad word. Naughty word.
Its body is fuller and its head is smaller.
Actually, the head being small is actually not as
I was gonna say
good.
that, but I didn't wanna sound sexist.
If you could take the head off of this one,
Uh-huh.
and the body,
Yeah. So when the head is more pointy, well, excuse my lack of, but,
well, see, that's not totally true either, because the head's not so pointy, that's the angle of the picture.
oh, okay.
See, because you're looking at the head down,
Uh-huh.
whereas you're looking at the head on like this. So that part of that's camera angle.
Don't you want them more rounded? Yeah.
The head is more rounded, that's the camera angle, I promise.
But you do want.
I've seen the fish in person.
Different
But
types
you
of
do,
krill have
yeah.
different shapes on them.
Well, what, yes.
Showa, for example.
You got to understand, a Showa body doesn't look like a Sanki body, and a Sanki body doesn't look like a Kohaku body. But if we're going to talk body shapes, we'll be here until y'all are, you know.
Which body did you say was better? The one on the left or the right?
I like them.
Well, I'm scared to say anything.
I
now.
like them both.
They're both good. I personally think this body would be a little better on this. But I'm scared to tell you why, because it's not what you think. Yes, ma'am.
So is the patterning all just the genetics, or does it matter what you feed them and how they're kept and what?
There are three proponents. Well, first of all, you can feed them whatever you want. If they don't have good genetics, it doesn't make a damn. But first thing you got to have is good genetics. Second thing you got to have, and I'm ordering these in importance, is what are the three things, Ryan?
Genetics, water, and feed, nutrition.
Say it again louder. She didn't hear you.
Genetics, water quality, and nutrition.
Water quality. So does that, do water quality and nutrition affect the pattern?
I'll put it this way: if you don't have a good genetics, it doesn't matter how good your water and genetic and
Assuming
food
your
are.
genetics is.
But if you don't have good water and good food, you're going to ruin whatever you got.
But what happens when they're ruined? Do they just get all scrawny and not voluptuous, or do they?
They'll never reach their potential.
People.
They won't finish?
Yeah, they never finish, they don't grow right, the colors don't develop properly. You know, in other words, the genetics gives you the potential, but it's your care,
I can make it
water
1 second
quality
if you
and
want.
food, nutrition, that brings that potential to fruition. Without that, you can't reach it. You can't, in other words, like you said, in East Texas, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear so bad to begin with, you can't make it good. But you can sure take a good fish and screw it up.
And these fish that you're getting here are very, very nice.